Man, we got our boy Dave. And man, what does he have for us today? Man, Dave is in his bag. You know what? I'm convinced. Listen, the biggest advocate for the FIRE community is our boy Dave. Now, Dave, I know he's old money and I know his concepts might seem dated to some, but I'm convinced. I think Dave is secretly like our biggest champion. He's our biggest advocate in the FIRE community. I'm convinced now, above all else, that there's no better branding uh, person online from the finance space than Dave Ramsey. He says the most controversial concepts. He speaks on the most simple things as far as figuring out how to get a hold of your finances. But man, I think he's secretly like our biggest champion in the FIRE community. So we're gonna have a conversation with two fellow brothers of the channel, the Intentional Millionaire and PerryUnlikely. But before we even get there, got a little something for you guys. Check this out. Check out this hot take.
Confused because I don't know what the hell George is doing a 3% withdrawal rate, because that's absolutely wrong. I'm gonna have to find out where that video is and get it taken down. Because that's just wrong. You don't need to have a 3% withdrawal rate. That's ridiculous.
Man, look at that. So without further ado, we have our brother to the channel that I just spoke on, and his name is the Intentional Millionaire. He is a millionaire, and he's going to speak on this from the standpoint of someone who's an investing expert, someone who spent some time out here making these considerations. And Dave said 3% is not practical. What do you think, Tim? What do you think about 3%?
What is going on to everyone in the chat? What I think about 3%, 3% is considered the golden number. And we're going to definitely have a discussion, but 8%, if you do 8%, you're going to be going back to work. That's for sure. But we're going to talk about it.
What we're going to do is we're going to bring up another brother to the channel, someone who has a significant amount of time out here in these investing streets, and someone who's had an opportunity to consider all sorts of different business channels and avenues. Really a brother that I really admire, someone who I feel like is moving in the direction that I would like to move in, both from a familial standpoint and from a career standpoint, and also a business standpoint. So we're going to bring up, without further ado, the brother PerryUnlikely. He's going to go ahead and speak on this concept.
What up, man? How's it going? Salute to both of you, man. Yeah, I'm excited, man. I appreciate the introduction, man. I'm definitely excited to discuss this, man. I know, there's so many numbers thrown out there. I lean towards the same direction that Intentional Millionaire does. I like you talk about 3%. The lower for me, right? The lower the better, in my opinion, and then you'll be all right. But you get to talking about 8%, 10%. Some people say 12. You like Tim said, you going back to work. So excited to discuss it, though. Definitely to discuss it. And I like Dave Ramsey. I don't agree, with everything he says, but I do like a lot of his points, and I think there's some good stuff which we've talked about before. But yeah, we got to get to the nitty gritty of this one for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, Tim, what do you think, man? I mean, our boy is saying that you can actually earn 12% on your money, Tim. So you take 12%, right? And then you can withdraw 8% from 12, and then you're left with 4% in order for it to appreciate and grow for the next year. Do you think, from your investing history, now give us a brief idea of when maybe you started your investing journey as far as doing maybe retirement investing?
All right, so I started my investment journey back in 2007. And that was a Roth IRA. I already had a 401k, but I got really knee deep into investing when I started my Roth IRA, because the 401k, you had limited funds. But with the Roth IRA, I had so many other avenues and so many other options. So because of that, I actually took the time to really research and start really understanding more of perspectives, more of looking at balance sheets, profit loss sheets, things like that. So,
Yeah, I mean, Perry, what about yourself, man? Like, when can you say that you started really like making considerations as far as your retirement investing yourself?
So funny enough, been the same year, 07 actually. And mine, has always mainly been as far as in the market, because I do invest in, crypto obviously, but even before that, real estate. But in the actual market, I've done some, single stock investing, if you will. I don't do a lot of that. But as far as 401k, back to 2007, and that's pretty much been my exposure. And the real thing I guess I didn't really know about, when I started investing is really just from a fee aspect, right? The fees and all the things, the other things that go into it. So it's just not as cut and dry. And actually, it's funny because when I initially started investing, I really was using some of those numbers that Dave has mentioned, over time. So you start to look and start to see, what types of returns we're actually talking. Yeah, it doesn't add up to me either.
Yeah, I mean, Perry, could you imagine in your and maybe it's different in like crypto, right? Now, could you imagine getting maybe an average of 12% returns on maybe a 3-year span? Or let's say you got an average of 12% returns last year, would that mean that you're automatically going to withdraw 8% next year? Like does that concept even make sense for you to base what you're going to do next year solely based upon what happened this previous year? Like, is that an automatic guarantee that if I made 12 or even if I made 15 last year, should I be making considerations about maybe pulling 9% for my fund or doing a drawdown at that rate?
Yeah, no, and the way that I always took, and this was even, this has been years ago now, and I always perceived that, and I want to say the number, one specific number, I feel like I remember Dave Ramsey saying was, I feel like I heard him saying 10%. I know I've heard him say at some point, over the past 70 years, the stock market, the S&P has given an average annual rate of return of 10%. Right. So now with that, I was looking at, okay, all right, cool. So you're saying 5 one year, 15 another, 8. So kind of bouncing back and forth, 8, 12, whatever you have it. We can do this numbers game, 7, 13, whatever, but 10 on average. So I was always looking at it. I guess when I was younger, I really looked at it just not really focused on it, but just thinking, okay, so if you're talking 8%, if the average is 10, then you in general should be able to actually, that's what I was thinking at the time, right? You should in general be able to actually take the 8%, and you still got some room to give there. So let's say that was fees or whatever the case be. That's how I thought about it originally. But over time, actually seeing what that range can be and how it's so affected by everything, right? What, to your point, no, you can't really look at it that way. You can't just because if you do that, when you start to talk about taking that percentage like that, you're going to run into some trouble. You're going to run into some trouble there. So it doesn't. It's not going to work that way. Essentially, it's just not going to work that way. And right, when you're no longer working, you need to be in position. You still got to have a steady stream of income that it goes across the line. So it's like, is it feast one year, famine the next? So that's why really the number needs to be realistically high enough to where you have a pretty good idea that this number of what I actually need is going to always be covered, unless just something crazy happens, right? That's the way it really should be. But I think Dave simplifies it too much, and I don't think the numbers quite add up.
Yeah. What do you think, Tim? I mean, does his philosophy even make remote sense to you, man? Like, in what scenario would it make sense? Maybe that's a question. That's a better question I should ask.
The scenario that would make sense that if in the real world you realistically over 3 decades averaged 12% every year, because the problem is you have to factor in the thing that's I think is getting missed is when you think about investments, the formula for growing the money and the formula for withdrawing is different, and I think that's the first thing we have to identify, because you can't use averages as the way to signify the withdrawal rate. The reason why is because, so let's just say in that year the market was negative 35%, but I'm still going to take out 8%. So now my negative 35 just went down by another 8%. So it's now 42%. I'm sorry, 43%. My bad. So now my rate is a negative 43% because I took out 8. So that 8 that I took out is going to add to the negative that I already have. And exactly. What you have to know in the market is when the market is down negative, it takes 3 to 5 years before you even get back to zero in your account. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio, and I think that's what a lot of people miss, and I don't think Dave is really factoring that in. Now, for somebody like Dave, it may not matter because he has a influx of cash flow. But for the average person, it's going to absolutely matter when that's your only source of income. And even if you think about Social Security, if that's your only source of income and you fall in this method, then one thing you also have to factor in is you have to factor in provisional tax. So that means that your Social Security could be even taxed. And I'm not going to go down that because that's a whole nother conversation. But so these are the things that's not getting factored in. And then also, too, you said 8%. You said that's also with the assumption that you're going to average 12 over the X amount of years, but you're also averaging that inflation is going to be 4 over all those years.
Exactly.
And as we know, in the last 2 years, inflation been what?
Eating away, man. It's been going up.
So now imagine if you do it in this year, let's just say you didn't make 12, you're taking out 8, but inflation is 9. So you're going to be depleting your account faster than it's growing, because when you have to remember you're in retirement now, so your growth exposure is the least that it can be at this point. You're gonna have some, but not a lot. So now it's basically like you having a big checking account and you got to live off that checking account.
Yeah, man.
Ain't no more coming in.
None at all. It's literally like, it's like everything that you have in your boat right there, right? Everything that you have right there at that time, you can't put nothing else. It's like almost like you're a hoarder. Just look at it, retirement investing like an opportunity for you, because the average person, they're hoarding all this money and they're saying that they're going to do little distributions to themselves over time with the projection in mind that, okay, hopefully, because my cost of living was about $40,000 when I was having an income, I'm hoping that in retirement, it's also going to be the same. And so I'm planning for this much to be taken out. But yeah, you never know. There's so many different factors that you don't really take into consideration. And man, our boy, he really likes to make it sound super simple, super simple, right? So let's see what else he says, right?
Or I hope you misunderstood. I hope we didn't put out trash like that.
Was it 4 to 5%? Like
no, it shouldn't be 4 to 5%. It ought to be more than that. I mean, if you're making 12 in good mutual funds, and the S&P has averaged 11.8. And if inflation for the last 80 years has averaged 4%, if you make 12 and you need to leave 4% in there for inflation raises, that leaves you 8. So I'm perfectly comfortable drawing 8. But if you want to be a little bit conservative, 7, but sure not 5 or 3.
Well, I was trying to back check it because, 3 to 5, I thought that was a big range. And a lot of the studies I found showed
Well, there's a lot
stats
of
from
studies that are
anything from-
stupid in this space. It's just wrong. Listen, man, the math I just gave you is the math.
Math is math.
okay,
Math
Dad.
is math.
If you're making 12% and inflation is 4, and you leave 4 in there, so your nest egg grows by 4, it's simple. 8 is what's left over. So if you got $1 million and you leave 4% in there, that's $40,000. Okay, so you now have $1,040,000. So the next year you get a rate of return of 12%, 11.5% on the $1,040,000.
Yeah. So I mean, he just has a way of just simplifying it so much, guys. He makes it seem so simple. Come on, guys, 12%. Like you make 12%, then you take out 8, and then you're left with 4. So then that 4% is gonna grow. It's simple math, guys.
So let's end it. So are those numbers correct? That's the first thing. Is the number of this 11% correct? That's what you have to start off with. Is even the rate of return you can get, is that number correct? Right. That's what I think that's what I think part of this whole thing is really just analyzing first. Are those numbers correct? Then to me though, right? It really is. You got to you have to look at fees. Then it really is a simple math equation. Now that part I agree with. When we verify the numbers are correct, it is simple math. It's that simple. It should be. But you got to go through. You got to go through. And then inflation, all that doesn't change. But still, in terms of when I'm talking to people, that's why I'm saying it's important are the numbers right. And what I'm telling you is if inflation, let's just use 100 years. If inflation has averaged 4, that's what I'm going with. I really don't care if it was 12, if it was 0. If it actually is 4 and we have good numbers, I'm going to lean towards 100 years of history to do that. Now, I'm not saying he's right, but what I'm saying is if we can look back and verify that it is in fact 11%, and we can verify that, and I'm saying this in a time that's inflation we haven't seen in years, but still, if the average is 4, then obviously we've seen spikes, we've seen lows, but I think it's about verifying and back testing that part, the actual information. And that's what people don't do a lot of the time. Or they try to pull from their own place. I think we have to really look at whatever various studies and see what those numbers suggest.
But Perry, that's like saying that you should be living off your crypto portfolio on a month-to-month basis, right? You might earn 12% this month. Next month, it might be 6%. And then the month after that, it might be 24%. And then the month after that, it might be 10%, So
no, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean, because obviously it's like Tim spoke to. It's not as simple as you. So I understand it's not as simple as using a percentage, because, when you do go and get 1%, trying to make that up, that it's not a simple straight line equation. So that I understand, but what I don't see people, but the only reason, so I understand that 100%, but still though, I think it is important in all these cases though. That's why I said you have to do the math. That's why I say it's a math equation, because of this. Once we verify those actual numbers he's saying regardless are right, then all we have to do is literally say, then we can literally go back. Then you can literally say, okay, fair enough. I'm going to pick these 5 years. This now, off of what you said, Dave, now this year I got 12. These 2 years I got 2. And you'll start to see where that math is not adding up. I'm just saying this is really still simple, but you still need to always verify the first claims of, are those claims, because I think people need to know that. I don't have that answer. I don't know.
Yes, those numbers are correct.
Okay.
Yeah, those numbers are correct. So the inflation has averaged about 4%. It's probably then crept up a little bit when you factor in the last 2 years. So it's probably about 4.5.
Okay.
4.5 to 5, I would say. because the anomalies sometimes overpower averages. And that's what we have to always remember. When you think about outliers could offset your bell curve just
Right.
from a mathematical perspective.
Right.
So the numbers are correct. However, the problem is with when we go to the equation, this is where it breaks down from the simplest form. Because the assumption is, let's just say you have 100,000 in there, and I'm gonna use 100,000 because it's easy for numbers wise.
Right.
You have 100,000. The first year, let's just say it goes up 12%. So you got what? 112,000 in the account.
Yep.
The next year, excuse me. The next year, let's just say it goes down by 12%. You back at 100,000.
Right. Right. Right.
But now the next year, let's just say it goes another negative 12%. Now you at what?
Yeah. Less.
You at less.
Yeah. Right.
So now that's the problem, because now I'm at less, but you have to remember now, let's just say now if it go back up another 12%,
it's 12% of a smaller
exactly.
Number.
It's 12% of a smaller number.
So see, I agree with all that. That's why I was saying I still think this thing's simple, because I honestly do think when you look at it, you're going to probably take. I think what you'll show is what I think you would show is right, like you said, the numbers right, but the numbers right he provided, but when you start to look at it and we just take any 10-year period, what you'll see is you can in your head say, hey, 100%, and we're just going with 10% every year. That's real simple. But it's not like almost like you do a auto finance calculator or whatever. When you start to run it, you're going to start to see, you're going to be like, some people are going to be like, well, hold up, I did this. And how the hell do I have less than, I only got 102,000. I started out, I've been doing this thing 6 years. And, so you could be 15 years in and the percentage you actually got, I mean, it could be less, but it's not going to, it's like it's never going to be like it's straight line 10%. It's never going to be that.
I can give you the best analogy to make this, the easiest way I can share how the mathematical equation is Dave Ramsey is considering off of simple interest.
Right.
Whereas how investing work, because of sequential risk, is actually based off of exponential interest.
Right.
And it could go exponentially up or exponentially down. Right, but it normally goes down faster. Because we all know, when you think about, if you just have a pot of money, it's more likely that you could spend it faster than you could replenish it. That's just a simple concept.
Yeah.
So the problem is he's treating this like you treat an auto loan. But the reality is this equation is more like a amortization in a mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference.
Yeah, it's very simple. This is a way to look at it. And I really got into this when I got into crypto, because it can come and go so quick. I have $100, right? Now, if I want to get a 50% return, which can really happen in crypto, right? It can go either way, but 50% return, right? That's $50, right? Now, I have $100. If I lose $50, now I have 50, right? So now to get back to that, it's 200%. You know what I'm saying? It's still $50 on either way, but it's $50 either way, but we're talking about a 200% return now versus, a 50% versus 200% on both sides of it. That's the issue. That's the issue right there. That's what you're saying is when you lose it, yeah, it's a lot. It goes a lot faster when you when you lose it. It does, because now I only have $50 that I'm trying to grow up to 100. Which is the difference. Where it's different when you got 100 and you're only trying to grow it by 50. You don't need as much momentum from the market to grow it, but to lose it, so.
And the biggest limitation to all this is that we're almost left to be only reactive to the market, right? So you don't really have like any data that can tell us into the future. You know, they say past performance is not indicative of future returns. So we can't say that just because you had 25% return last year that you're going to have it going into the future. In my opinion, I'm more of the thinking that if you can draw down like 1% of your portfolio, you can make all the preparations in the world, whether it takes you 20 years, 30 years, in order for you to be in position. If you can put yourself in position to be prepared mentally for a 1% return or 1% drawdown on your money, man, I mean, I don't know how much you could really lose. I mean, you could potentially maybe draw down a little bit less, like 0.5% or something like that. But you just run up that pot of money, get it to be something like $10 million, and then draw down 1%. That's $100,000 a year that you would draw out of $10 million, and then you leave that margin there. You leave that gap because, like you just said, Tim, right? There are factors that we don't really consider when we look at the performance of a given security. We say that we saw maybe 12%. We don't know what kind of fees are being imposed on our dollars. We don't know exactly, like, if we're trading or if maybe we're changing hands, how long we've been carrying that specific fund might not really be the same thing as what's on that paper. So, you know, there's all sorts of different factors that we should really consider. And I mean, Dave is my guy. I really think that based upon what I'm seeing, he is like low key, like a FIRE advocate. And, you know, it's just like, I think that he's just doing all this as a performative thing, just to stir up some controversy. He knows that anytime he goes left, people are going to talk about it. More people are going to pay attention to the show so they can catch his hot takes. So I think that is really, really interesting, though. Let's see what else he says.
And so if you want to be a little bit conservative, maybe 5%.
Would you say,
but there's all these goobers out there who have always put this 4% crap in the market, and I'm just irate right now that we have joined the stupidity.
why is it that stupid, though?
Rachel's asking the real question. This is what I wanted to hear from Dave.
Look at that. Hold up now. Look. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being Dave? Now, here it is. Your dad is saying 5% is ridiculous, right? And then you're saying to yourself, because now, yeah, you listen to dad coming up and you said, yeah, you know, dad shares really good information. But then you start thinking to yourself, you're like, hold up. You know, I know what dad says, but is it a far-fetched concept for us to actually consider 5%?
To the problem of Dave Ramsey's simplified formula, which doesn't take into account the fact that the market.
And the next year, it'll be, you know, $1,090,000. Inflation giving you a cost of living raise.
Again, here we
Out there have always put this. You want to be a little bit conservative, maybe 5%.
Would you say,
but there's all these goobers out there have always put this 4% crap in the market, and I'm just irate right now that we have joined the stupidity.
why is it that stupid, though?
Rachel's asking.
And I'm just irate right now that we have joined the stupidity.
Why is it that stupid, though?
Market, and I'm just irate right now that we have joined the stupidity.
Why is it that stupid, though?
Yeah. Man, can you imagine your daughter questioning you on live TV? Here you are trying to drive a point home, and she's like, "Hold up, Dad! Like that doesn't really make sense." But
she's asking the question because she don't know, because when you think about it, it doesn't sound bad. Like, if a person is saying, "Why not put the risk more in my favor by doing a lower withdrawal rate," what is wrong with that? When you think about it. I can't hear you, Perry. You muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. It can't hurt you, right? I mean,
so that's why she's asking the question. Like, she's really genuine now. If you look at her, she's really genuine now. She's confused.
Yeah.
That's why she's asking the question. Look at her. She's confused.
Yeah, she's thinking right there.
Look at Dave. Look at Dave. Look at the look on his face. I said, look at. He's like, man, when I get home, you're gonna hear it.
Well, that's like, to me, it's almost like if you said you're going to buy a home in 2 years, and they're estimating that the rate will be the rate at that time will be 5%. Now, me naturally, how I am, okay, I'm gonna figure up 6. I'm using 6 now, and that'd be like saying, well, why would you do that? Because if it's 5, then I'm good. But what
Right.
happens if I factor it at 5, and if I factor it at 5 and it ends up being 6? You'd be talking to the difference in between what you can afford and what you can't. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? So that's why it just, I don't see what the issue is with it. But I think to what Sim says, he is the biggest advertiser for the community, and I mean, he puts on a show, man. But it does make you wonder: does he believe that 100%? And this is actually one of those first things that I say, because we just did a stream on him. This is one of the first ones I actually say, yo, man, I think he's got this just wrong. I mean, I think this one's just incorrect, because he hadn't really thought about it. And you know what? Let me tell you why he can do it, right? Well, here's why he can do it. You guys know I'm into finance hardcore. Now, the reason why I may be a little bit different in this, I've never thought in depth. Like, if that was my primary vehicle, right, because I have rental properties, if that was my primary vehicle, then yes, I would go into it even more. But because it's not, it's like, I'm just really going to rely. I'll have the 401k, but I'm relying on rental property income personally. That's my goal, to live off of. So it's not really something I have to worry about to that point. But think about it. It is something he can just tell people, the average person, and they'll just be like, oh, okay, cool. And they're not really going to dig in. They're not really going to dig in. But what I do wonder is, because Dave's been around for a while, are we going to have some people down the road starting to be like, man, I listened to that and I paid off all my bills, but boy, I'm up here greeting now because that it wasn't mathing right. Like, at some point, are we going to have people like, yo, that ain't right. I need to go back to, like, they're not even retired yet. They're like, yo, I need to be working on it. I was coming in home plate. I need to start working on that raise, because that's not going to work, so.
Right. Because now imagine going back to the example, Perry, of the 100,000 and it goes down 12%. So you're at what? 80, what?
88.
88,000. But now imagine the second year that it go down another 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you're at 80,000.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now the next year that it goes back up, it's going back up on 80,000. That's going back up on $20,000 less.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right,
that's the part I don't think he's really thinking about.
Right. Yeah. that definitely makes
But
that definitely makes it. Well, just the quick math, Tim. You said, let's say it drops down right to 88, so you take a 12% loss. Even the next year, if you get a 20% gain off of that 88, you're at 105.
right.
So it's like you're up over 2 years, right? You're up 5. And that's with a 12% down and 20% up. So even with that, that's why, you're at 105. That's why really and at that point over 2 years, you actually got a 5% return. It's not 8. And those are pretty good swings. It's still not perfect, but that does show you how it could fluctuate so much. How it's not going to be spot on.
But hold up, let's put the caveat on that, because this is so, and not to make this technical for anybody watching, but the caveat to that is that's assuming you back fully in the market. You're retired now, so in retirement,
that's a great
you
point.
ain't even gonna be getting that percentage. That's the other part of Dave's equation that's just broke.
Right. Yeah.
You're not even gonna be aggressive where you're gonna be getting that type of rate of return.
Right. Yeah.
So you're in retirement.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Not filling it up anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm just so lost on it. Like,
yeah. And that's the other piece too. You're spot on. With you being with you being in the market, I mean, to keep this thing going, you got to be in the market, but you're not going to be aggressively in the market. So those things that just getting 20% is, you're not going to get that. You're not even going to get that. So yeah. So let me ask you guys this then. What do you guys believe? What do you guys believe the number should be? Because is 5% really even reasonable? I don't even know that I think I feel a lot more comfortable with 5%, but I don't know. I don't even feel that that's I don't even know that I feel that that's the best. The best
The sequential studies show that it should be 3%.
3
with 4% being the max. But that depends really, that 4% really depends on, how much you build in the nest egg.
Man. So man, 3%. Geez, well, you gotta have you gotta have some bread in there.
A boatload, man.
Yeah, for most people to have a comfortable retirement, just based off of the current economic times, they need about 2.5 in their retirement account.
Yeah, man.
I'm so Perry. I'm at 1%. I'm still holding on to my 1, man. Like 1 is like.
I know your FIRE community, bro.
Listen, man. You just gotta listen. He said rice and beans. Listen, we're cooking meals. I just organized some spices this past week, right?
Right.
So we're cooking meals at the house. We're having parties at the house, inviting all my people. They can bring like the raw meats or what have you, and we can season the food. And if someone has a gourmet recipe that they would like to cook, they can go ahead and prepare the gourmet recipe. The men can be out there on the grill, firing up all the different levels or different kinds of steaks, and just enjoy the whole experience, figuring out ways to be creative and to make this thing fun. Because, let's be honest, I know people work hard in order for them to have something in retirement, but are we really saying that we want to take out more than we can actually manage in retirement, with the likelihood of something like what's happened in the last 3 years actually taking place? Like, who would have thought that the cost of living 3-4 years ago would be half of what it is today? So there are a lot of things that we just really could not put into the formula. In my opinion, 1% just seems to be a little bit more practical. And if you have a time horizon, a long runway for you to actually get there, you can do it if you're in your 20s, your 30s today. Now, people who are older, that might be a little bit tougher because they might not really know exactly how to allocate those funds and what to do during the time where now they're at the crunch time and they can't really afford to be in aggressive investments, and they have to figure out a solid launching pad in order for them to be a little bit more conservative. Were you going to say something, Sam?
Yeah, and I think the conversation around just retirement as a whole, you don't hear a lot of people talk about is the taxes. Yeah. You still got to factor in the taxes, because the problem I think most people think is retirement is going to be like their paycheck, meaning you get your check, they take all the taxes out. And that varies so much because that depends on what type of retirement vehicle you're going to be using when you actually retire. So you may be responsible for the taxes later. And that throws the whole equation off, but you don't really hear about people talking about taxes.
Well, in the FIRE community, we do talk about taxes, right? Now, in the FIRE community, the way that we understand it is that you no longer have earned income, right? So with the drawdowns, the objective is to really do whatever you can to understand how much it costs for you to live on a year-by-year basis. Now, when I first came into the FIRE community, there was a 4% drawdown. So let's say you have $1 million, right? You're drawing down 4%, which is something along the lines of $40,000 annually, right? Now, at $40,000, you're in one of the lower tax brackets. So it's understood that given the fact that you don't have earned income, you're going to be paying a lower amount as far as your taxes go, right? So you do consider the taxes. It's just that given that it's not specifically earned income through a job, and it's either through like a what they call like a a Roth conversion ladder where you could convert a traditional retirement plan into a Roth, where you create a taxable event during the time that you don't have no earned income. And then now you're paying, like I said, the tax rate based upon a lower amount of money compared to you being a higher income earner and paying a higher tax base at that point compared to a lower. But what you want to say, Tim?
So my question is, do the FIRE, because I don't know everything about the FIRE movement, but my question is, does the FIRE movement include Social Security?
Well, the FIRE community is really rooted in early retirement. So it's essentially people who are conserving the money today, right? So from 25 to about 40, 45, they're really being aggressive about how much they're putting into their retirement. And then they're doing like an early withdrawal. So they retire maybe like 45 from corporate work, and they might still have like a blog or a YouTube channel or something that they're making money from, but it's not really like earned income in the same way that you're exchanging it on the corporate from a corporate standpoint. And so they're banking on doing either a drawdown from their Roth and withdrawing however much they need between 45 and 59 and a half, or they're potentially just using that income from their passions in order to really fuel their lifestyle. But ultimately, the primary objective is to live a frugal lifestyle, plan for at least 25% of however much it's going to cost you from an expense standpoint, and do something along the lines. It used to be 4%. In my opinion, I'm more along the lines of somewhere around 1% of what you would have in retirement. And like I said, with the conversion ladder, with you creating taxable events in retirement, let's say I have $2 million, right? And it's on the traditional side of the house, right? And what happens is that you need to calculate it 5 years before you need it, Tim. You create the schedule. You say, hey, in 5 years, I'll need $50,000. So then I can create a taxable event in order for me to have those funds in 5 years from my Roth, as I'm converting it from Roth from traditional to Roth. And then I'm just paying taxes on that little bit of money. But the Social Security doesn't even come to the conversation until we're talking about 59, 62, 65, or what have you. It's just about really living as frugal as possible during your most earning years, and then just making plans for those sort of things, like the normal stuff. Now, one thing I have seen, I'll say this and I'll let you go ahead and go, is that the things that are not specifically considered like something like college tuition, right? Like you need to have the ability to be able to pay for your child's tuition. And you can't really do that if you do early retirement, right? Because now you don't have the earned income to say, hey, you are earning this much on an annual basis, so your child can qualify for these educational opportunities compared to another. So we've seen people come back into the space based upon just that one specific consideration, having to pay for their children's college, or sometimes, in the event of like medical expenses being higher than expected. Because we also talk about having the HSA and using the HSA in order to cover all our expenses, whether it's a transaction that we had 20 years ago that we have not received the reimbursement on, or it's just a medical event that just happens between now and like 65 and a half.
Right.
But
but you can't. But some stuff with the HSA, you can't really use all that pot of money until you reach a certain age where you can use it for anything.
Yeah, 60. I think it's 65. It was 65 at least before.
Well, the only reason why I'm asking that is because, so how do they factor in? Let's just say once you do get to 62 and you decide you want to take retirement, Social Security, you want to add that too. Now that's going to be a taxable event, because depending on if they have anything other than the Roth IRA, it's going to be considered part of income, and now they're going to have the provisional tax on that Social Security check.
Yeah, but I mean, but they're still forecasting what their need is going to be. So they're just going to reduce the amount that would be withdrawn from their primary retirement, and then incorporate the Social Security. The part that's really kind of unfortunate is that if you do end up contributing over a shorter span of time, maybe a higher balance, but a shorter span of time, you don't really have the Social Security contributions to really justify you being able to get a significant check in actual retirement. So that's why people who are kind of critics of the FIRE community, they say, yeah, you guys are talking about early retirement, but you're doing a blog, you're running a YouTube channel, you have all these different platforms. So you're giving up corporate work, but you're still working in some way, shape, or form.
Right, but I'm only saying that though is because it's based off of, if it's anything other than a Roth IRA, okay, even if they don't pay into Social Security and they end up having to they be eligible for a Social Security check, depending on what assets they have outside of that, then they're going to get taxed on that check. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that
because most people don't talk about the tax on the Social Security check. Is all I'm saying. It could be pretty healthy.
Yeah. I mean, depending upon how much you're earning, and I mean, it's fair to say that the community, for me, this is where Dave lost me. Right, Dave lost me when he starts talking about having a mutual fund over having an index fund. What I've realized is that in the FIRE community, much of the conversation is really centered around being empowered in order for you to make educated decisions, as opposed to just saying, hey, go towards a mutual fund, because mutual funds have historically been known to return better than the market. And I said, yeah, I get it, but I mean, how much are they charging you for you to have access to those funds? And 1% of your portfolio compared to an ETF that's charging you 0.03%, that's a big difference. I mean, we're talking about a huge difference. 1%, 0.03%. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's part of the reason why Vanguard owns so much, because it's like an easy decision to make. Like, why would I pay somebody 1% when I can pay them 0.03%? And the company owns literally the whole world,
Right.
Literally the whole world. But yeah, so
but also that's, and like I said, and Perry stated it earlier, I have nothing against Dave Ramsey. I think his program is absolutely phenomenal. But this one thing, though, he's just dead wrong on it. And on top of the reason why he's pushing mutual funds is because he has his own in-house group that market mutual funds. So let's be clear on that, because they probably charge front-end loads. That's a front-end expense. So for anybody watching, what that means is, in a mutual fund, if you're going to put $100 inside that mutual fund, they're going to charge you a front-end load, which is 5.75% for most. So that means that whole $100 is not going to go in the mutual fund. It's going to be more like $95. It's going to go inside the mutual fund. Actually, it's going to be like $94 and some change. It's going to actually go in a mutual fund. And then on top of that, every year you're going to get charged a fee on the mutual fund also. So just to give you an idea, so that's one of the things that you also have to think about. Whereas if you have an index or ETF, you don't get charged that front end load. It's normally a no load, and you only pay that 0.03% on once a year. So,
man, yeah, and then, man, I just think that it's wild that I think it's wild that Rachel really asked that question, but that I think seeing Dave's response and how he looked at her is like, man, it's like, why are you even asking me that question? Because that's not the first time I've seen her actually ask questions on air, which leads me to think that the future of Ramsey Solutions could be very well governed by Rachel, and her ideas are going to be a little bit more open-minded than her dad's. She'll be making considerations that Dave never would have considered at all. So it's really, really interesting to see her really kind of push back a little bit, say, well, why, Daddy? Why is that the case?
Yeah, Dave's pretty high strung.
If you think you can only pull off 4% off of investments making 12, where the flip is the other 8% going?
There it is again. There's a good question that Dave should be asking. Where is it going? It's going to volatility risk and it's going to sequence risk. That's where it goes. There's solid math to back that up that isn't oversimplified and conforms beautifully to reality.
Well, 4% of it went to inflation. That's where it went. The other 4% is just sitting there. So you are growing your investments instead of living off of them. I'm not destroying the nest egg. I'm not even touching the nest egg. I'm growing the nest egg by leaving 4% in there.
Yeah.
Taking 8 off of a 12 growth rate.
Go a 10% rate of return. Go a little bit more conservative with your rate of return. Go 10%. What would you do with 10%?
Well, then 4 off of that, so 6.
6, yeah.
But why are you going to underinvest? The problem is when you go down these stupid nerd rabbit holes in these Reddit threads with these morons who live in their mother's basement.
I guess this now makes me a moron that lives in my
community, and then people go, I don't have enough money. It's hopeless. I'll never be able to save enough to retire. $1 million should create for you an $80,000 income, boys and girls. So you should perpetually, like if forever, you should be able to pull 80,000 forever.
Forever, he says, Tim. Forever. That's like what they said on Sandlot. Forever. So that's what he says, man. He says you should be able to draw it out, and it's that specific ideology right there. That's what he lost me at.
If your real number, if the real number, like we were discussing, were 3%, then that's why what Tim said, that $2.5 million is going to get you about 75,000 a year. That's really what that's at. But yeah, now just when he says that though, $1 million should get you 80. That sounds buck wild. That sounds wild. Because at that point, then people could just go hard in the paint for about 20 years. You know what I'm saying? Just go as hard as possible and then be done. But less than 20. But it's that sounds. Yeah, there's definitely pieces left out, obviously, because, like you said, because when he says forever, that means, okay, money's in the market. And the question that's got to be asked is, how am I getting that in the down years?
Right. That's
how am I rebounding back to that after the down years? That's the piece you have to look at.
Right. Because let's just say it goes down 10%. The next year, it goes up 5%. Then the next year, it goes down 2%. Then the next year, it goes back up 10%. You see how that worked? But you never got back to the original balance yet. And that's 3 years now.
Trying to crawl up, man.
And I guess he's just really, I think this is what happens though sometimes I think Sim was going to play the rest of the video because I think he said at the end, he really say what it really is at the end. You got to really catch it though.
He's slick, man. I mean, he's slick. He does the hot takes and he does whatever. I think he is honestly the Simon Cowell of personal finance, man. He just says the charged up things real deep down inside. He's a softie. He's sitting over there probably crying every time somebody does a debt-free screen. So he's just saying this in order for him to get the hot takes and from us. But yeah, let's see what else he says.
And never destroy it. Now and so when you tell people that $1 million creates a $40,000 income, you go, oh, I've got to have $2 million and I can't make that, then this system doesn't work. So what you're doing with this bogus math is you're stealing people's hope. That's why I'm pissed about it.
Apparently the Hope-Filled Financial Podcast, I telling them to live.
So, I don't know what else to say. So just considering that alone, you just see that Dave is really a hope dealer, guys.
Right. That's what I said. That's the part right there. So he's saying that he's discrediting everybody that did the math. It proved how much really going to allow people to live through retirement. And he's more focused on it kills their hope because now they have to really save more to really get to the number that he just mentioned. See how that worked?
Yeah, man.
So that's no different than let me twist the truth a little bit just so you can get the buy-in and you can feel excited about doing it.
Oh, Perry,
you muted.
Yeah, man. I mean,
my bad, y'all. This might actually be a master class in YouTube. Let me explain why, because I've seen this over the years. Well, you ever notice how these apology videos, they're never like, think about it. Even someone who live streams and has people up on a panel, notice, I mean, the apology is always just them. It's just communications one way. So the thing about with Dave is, though, you can't talk to him to give him the numbers directly. You know, I mean, you can do a video about him or whatever, but I do think if it came down to it, he would, I mean, it's like he'd just be the loudest person in the room, basically. Because, I mean, you should be able to, there should be no one that has a problem with breaking down how that works. And what we do know is if we just plug those in, like I was saying earlier, you know, we can do anything. We can keep it real easy with that average 10%. But when we do that over 20 years and we select the various numbers and you have him go through it, we factually know there's going to be a problem with the math. There's no debating that. But trying to go through that with him, you can't do it. So like you said, it is dealing hope. That's exactly what it is.
I mean, what it looks like is he's more concerned with just selling you hope than to actually give you hard numbers. So if he's supposed to be like really like a straight shooter, you just give them the real numbers, man. Let them figure out how to get there, because majority of your audience, they're become debt free, which means that the engine that they're working with in order to be prepared for retirement can be potentially a lot stronger than everybody else out here with consumer debt. It's just a matter of him really giving like hard line evidence and saying, hey, listen, based upon what's happening out here, you need to have 2.5%, 2.5 million. You need to have the 10 million. Do what you can right now in order for you to be in position. But don't sit up here and tell people that they can live off $500,000 and withdraw 8% interest. I mean, you can get 12% on 500,000 and then withdraw 8% from that 12%, which is based upon last year's number, which anything could turn. We can have what happened in 2020 happen all over again. It's just wild to me. And I don't really get how he's okay telling people, really just selling them some hope. That's all he's really pushing at this point. I mean, through his programs, maybe that's his primary prerogative, is to just be a hope dealer for real.
All right.
So go a 10% rate of return. Go a little bit more conservative with your rate of return. Go 10%. What would you do with 10%?
Well, then 4 off of that, so 6.
6, yeah.
But why are you going to underinvest? The problem is when you go down these stupid nerd rabbit holes in these Reddit threads with these morons who live in their mother's basement.
I guess this now makes me a moron that lives in my mother's basement. No.
And then you put that out into the dadgum community, and then people go, I don't have enough money. It's hopeless. I'll never be able to save enough to retire. $1 million should create for you an $80,000 income, boys and girls.
Yeah, man. So really, that's pretty much the crux of what he's saying to us. And let's not forget what he really started this conversation out with. Because if we're really being honest, the conversation started out as a result of his own co-host actually pushing out this 3% narrative. It wasn't because this one guy decided to call him and say, hey, I want to be able to draw down less than the 8% that you advocate for. I really want to do exactly what your co-host is telling me. Let's just go ahead and just circle back what really started this whole conversation in the first place.
Okay, I'm a little confused because I don't know what the hell George is doing a 3% withdrawal rate. because that's absolutely wrong. I'm gonna have to find out where that video is and get it taken down. Because that's just wrong. You don't need to have a 3% withdrawal rate. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So his main thing is that you shouldn't be doing a 3% withdrawal rate. And you can look in the description. I've attached some articles that say the opposite. You know, they say that you should draw down something like 4 to 5% the first year and then start making adjustments for inflation going along the way. But you shouldn't be planning for 8%. So just like you were saying, Perry, it's much more about just selling you something that's really controversial, but then I can say on black and white, this is actually what I'm actually pushing, because this is documented on my platform. This is what it is. What I said that day, oh, it was just a hot take, you know, I was just talking, but the evidence is there where it says, hey, 3%. I mean, 3% is what you should be doing from George Kamel's standpoint. But from my own website, it says 45% first year, and then start making adjustments for inflation. So I just want to take out the time real quick to recognize the chat. Salute everyone that's come through. I appreciate you coming through. On the spot came through. Listen, On the Spot is another fellow content creator. She's sitting up here telling us about canceling Christmas, man. Like, do you think people can actually pull that off on the spot? Do you think that people are willing to do that? Or are we willing to go ahead and take that $1 trillion in credit card debt that we have and bump it up to maybe 1.5? Let's just see, you know? So salute to On the Spot for coming through, and salute to our brother of the channel, Peter Investor M. What do you think, Peter? You know, Peter, what's your ideal drawdown rate? I'd be curious to understand what your potential retirement number looks like. Mine is in the neighborhood of something like 10 million on a 1% drawdown. Tim, what did you say yours was? I don't know if I got your number, Tim. What'd you say?
10 million.
10 million. What kind of drawdown are you talking about?
I'm doing 3%.
3
million,
okay.
3%. I'm good.
All right. So Perry, what do you think, man? What would make sense to you?
Man, see, it's what makes sense to me is real estate more, but that's just because that's what. Now I'm not, and there's no problem with that. Like I said, I still do 401k, but I do agree with in nature with what Tim is saying. I mean, it's gonna be way higher. It's gonna be a number like that where we're really talking like more like a 3%, right? To me, but honestly, the way that I've looked at it is, you know, I plan and I should be pretty much have enough real estate to where my income is just the same, or it probably actually be more than my income's been from actually, you know, just from working or whatever for other people. So that's kind of been my plan, but that's a whole nother route. But as far as to really get those returns, I really do like a number like Tim says, a lot more, not no 1 million. I mean, so, that's wild.
So Perry, so what you think? You think you need, like, let's say in retirement, you, your wife, and your boys. I mean, it's really be just you and your wife, right? So you think that you guys could live on maybe like $100? I mean, it's gonna be $100,000 a year in retirement.
Let's put it this way. Yeah, actually, I think, you know, that's looking at a lot. You know, a lot will change, right? But yeah, I actually think I'm trying to think about the tax aspect of it, you know, just off the bat. But if we're talking about it, to me, I'm saying 100,000 net, you know, probably more like 100,000 net. And I believe we'll have more than that, but I believe we could definitely live off of that because everything would be paid off. I mean, everything would be paid off. So yeah, I definitely think that's doable, but I would want to look more at like 100,000 net, but I would want to have more than that, you know, but I do believe that's feasible for sure.
So Tim, so you're in the same neighborhood, something along the lines of like 100,000 annually in retirement.
No, that's more than that. 10 million, 3%. That's 300 grand.
No, it's not 300. No, you said 3%. No, that's not 3.
Oh yeah, yeah.
100.
Yeah. Yeah, it's up there.
300,000.
Yeah, it's 300,000.
Hold on, man. You know I'm a C student, man. Hold on. Now I'm gonna have to go ahead and pull my calculator out. So I'm in that neighborhood, man. I think like 100 is a solid number. And oh dang, hold on, too many zeros. So what do you think, chat? Salute to Miss Tyrese.me. Tyrese, what's your retirement number? What is your ideal drawdown value or your drawdown income in retirement? So Tim said he's in 100,000. I said about $100,000.
No, I said 300,000, Tim.
I'm still doing the math, man.
He's right because remember we said 2.5. I did the math. 2.5 million at 3% was 75. So he's definitely right. 10. Right. Yeah, it's 300,000.
It is 300. Yeah. What am I thinking? Yeah, my bad. I'm thinking about my one. I'm so married to my 1%. I'm just
10% is $1 million.
I'm living there at my 1%. Listen, I'm like, you can't do no more than one. And then, you got to take out the time to live, guys. What did she say? She says 100 net a year for empty nesters is good, especially if everything's paid for. Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And I actually, now my real opinion is I'll probably have double that or more. I really feel that way. But it's just like when I'm talking about what I need, that's really what I see probably being, because I'm just kind of thinking to my head, taxes on, like we said, net, that's a pretty good amount, so.
Well, and I explain why I said 3% of 10 million is because now I got enough where I can still live and I can genuinely do stuff and give and all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. Yeah,
and be an inspiration for somebody else, because I ain't gonna take it with me no way. So I mean, might as well do something now. Right. That's kind of how the philosophy behind that is.
Well, and the good thing is like so many other people on YouTube, even if you had just $300, you could just act like you had 300,000. So it doesn't matter, right? Just act like it, right?
Right.
Fake
it. Owner Spot says, 100,000 in 2023 will be about 300,000 in 2043. Yeah, I mean
that's another point, right? It very well could be. So
no, that's not right, because Dave said inflation gonna stay at 4%.
Oh, no, just 4%. Right?
Flat line. Man, the fantasies, man. What is Peter Investor M? If you're still in here, man, give us your number, man. I've never ever seen you really speak on that specific number. What is?
I don't think we really have to worry, because you know what? I think 4% is a little too much, because remember the Fed says they like to keep it at 2%.
That's what they say.
But they charge you 6% if you owe them.
Right.
What does Tyree say? House paid off, no car note. 100,000 is comfortable, right? 300K is extremely comfortable. That's what I said, man. Like Tim is trying to be on a cruise like every other weekend. I mean,
I don't know about y'all. I'm just saying, for me, I want to get there and have a surplus. I don't want to be on the edge. I'm just saying,
right.
I want to get older, and now I ain't got to think about that.
Right. Yeah.
And I think we got to get more. To me, I think more people should have that philosophy, because even at 3%, 4%, and all that, if you just know you got extra, then you ain't got to think about it. And that's kind of, I think, as you get older, that's what a place you should be, because still you have to factor in 100K is great, but what about if you have some medical happen? You older now.
I mean, but that's what the HSA is for, Tim. I mean, if you could have, so how much would you say that you need to have in your HSA then? Okay, so let's go ahead and say that, right? Let's say you're pulling down maybe $300,000, right? How much do you think you need to have in your HSA for you to feel like, okay, I'm prepared for whatever event might take place?
The HSA need to at least have $1 million in it.
Now, would you say the HSA needs to just have that money sitting there, or do you think that that HSA needs to be working in the market?
Well,
I'm
that
talking about between
depends.
the working years all the way up to retirement.
Well, it should be working even your working years, but then when you're in retirement, it still should have some exposure to growth. That's in all accounts. All accounts still should have some exposure to growth. It's just how much. And that how much is going to be dependent upon what other assets and what is your strategy and what you're trying to do individually.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's definitely something that you can't just go cold turkey on it. You know, you really need to have like a little bit of let one foot in and one foot out. You know,
right? Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to have all of it in the market. Then when you need it, now you just created a event.
Right. Yeah.
But so that's one, and then the other side of that is because now you still wanted to grow some because now you don't want to have to touch your other investment money to take care of medical. So you want to kind of have that. That's going to go back to your risk profile and what your strategy is for you as an individual.
Okay, Tim. So now from an investing standpoint, what is actually considered to be rich? Now online, I hear everybody talking about wealth building. I hear everybody talking about being rich and being well off. In your opinion, what number is someone actually considered to be rich, in your opinion?
5 million or more.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What about you, Perry?
I'm
talking about net worth overall.
Yeah, I mean, I lean towards probably, honestly, that. Yeah, probably about that 5 million. I think that'll, over time will kind of go up, right? Obviously, but yeah, I think probably 5 million. And one reason I think that's a good number, because I was just actually sitting here thinking, I kind of looked at it like, when I said that 100 net, right? And there's no perfect formula, but I started thinking, all right, so how, if it's assets we're talking, how many assets is that, right? And when you start to think about it, how many assets that is as far as like rental properties or whatever, it's essentially like if you wanted to, you could cash that. I mean, you could cash that out. It's not perfect, but right, you could cash that out and put it in the market, right? How much would that give you then? I was just kind of thinking about that. And when you really start to think about how many properties you'd have to give you that, I feel like 5 million is probably a really good. It's probably a really good number, honestly.
Okay, chat. So, chat, go ahead and put down for us. I'm going to get to the chat in a second, but I want to know what you guys think. At what net worth value are you considering yourself to be rich? I have a number that I've heard, but I want to see if you guys can guess it. Now, I'll go ahead and say mine. Or I'll go ahead and say what I've heard, right? But I want to give the chat an opportunity. Go ahead and put your number. Is it 10 million? Is it 20 million? Is it 30 million? Is it 5 million, 7 million, 7.5? What is it? So what I've heard is that you're considered to be rich when you actually have 30 million. Your net worth is 30 million, and anything between 30 million and below is actually considered to be just well off. But then everything above that, you're rich, right? Now, Tim, at what number do you consider yourself to be? That's actually
wealthy to me.
But you changed the question there, Sim. You asked.
I said rich.
No. You said us individually, and now you just base yours off of what the market said. So that's two different things.
Hold up now. Hold
that's two different things, Sim.
Hold up now. Listen, I have became the market now, right? I've been using the colloquialism of the finance space. I'm one with the culture. So
what was your question?
Listen, I had to change my vocabulary. You gotta when you go into an environment, you gotta be with the locals.
So what you're saying is So what you saying is you just did a Dave Ramsey on me.
No, bitch on y'all,
You're telling me hope. No, what was your question?
All right. So listen, guys, keep hope alive, okay? Don't lose it.
What was your question?
So the question is this. All right. So Tim said rich is 5 million. What did you say, Perry? You said it was somewhere around those lines?
No, I said the same thing.
All right, let's see.
Yeah, I think about 5 million, same thing I said.
Saying. Hold on.
I think 30 million is wealthy.
Right? 30? Okay. Hey, that's your boy, Howard alum, right? Oh yeah, 30. Cassie's rich. She's rich, right? Okay.
Peter Invest M posted a chat.
Which one? He posted
the. He said 2 million average. Yeah, 2 million average, 5 million richer, 25 million above.
I'm down here.
You hot mic, Perry, hot mic.
I got him. I think
500 million wealthy.
Yeah. So yeah. So check this out.
Sorry for getting all of that. I thought I heard my son was screaming, man.
He's a real parent, man.
Yeah, man. We try to make it work.
Listen, all right. Let's go back. Let's go back to Peter Investor M. Peter said, "All right, 2 million is average, 5 million is richer, 25 and above ultra rich, 500 is wealthy." So, a hedge fund manager from, remember I told you guys I'm with the culture. You know what I mean? So I got to use the language that the culture uses, right? So he says that 30 million is actually considered to be rich. And then he said that wealthy is actually at $100 million. Now, the significance behind the 100 million is that 100 million is typically where you start incorporating a family office. And that's usually like an investing firm that's solely dedicated to growing your investment pool, right? So they're allocating your assets in a strategic manner in order for you to be able to have that generational growth and to have the ability for you to be able to hand it off to your heirs. So that's where the 100 million becomes part of the conversation. But it's really, really interesting just to really speak the language of the finance space, because I feel like when we start talking about these numbers are considered to be rich and the culture doesn't say the same exact thing, I just think that it's kind of a misstep on our behalf. What does Peter Investor M say here right here? He says, by the time but the number you have in mind in your account for different variables, hold on. By the time your number in mind, you end up having it in your account for different variables affecting your payment, i.e. Black Swan event. Yeah, I mean, that's what we just had like recently, right? So we had plenty of people who were potentially planning for retirement here in the last 3 years, and these events didn't really, these unexpected events took place. And, oops, hold on. Yeah, these unexpected events end up taking place, and we just have to make sure that we are considering that, yeah, the unexpected could happen, and are we going to be able to weather those storms? So I just want to take out the time to say that. So I want to also say salute to Tam. Tam, this is your conversation right here. Retirement planning, strategic investing. This is the conversation that Tam talks about. And Tam was actually one of the first people who started having that $10 million conversation. And I really like the idea of having $10 million in your retirement, really based upon what I heard her say. So check out her channel. I have her channel in the description as well. Check out Women in Linux. And Women in Linux is a channel where one of the first channels that really talks about how to make the money, and then also talks about how to go about potentially considering different strategies once you've making the money and figuring out ways for you to retain that money. So I really like her channel because she has those conversations, right? So Peter Investor M says the sweet spot is 4% mathematically speaking, right? That's what I said. And 4 is a prime number. So it was, but that was like pretty much like 2019, you know. Owner Spot says that she's got to be able to save all that money for the facelifts, right? Yeah. I mean, I get you, but you could just move to Japan where the average age is 80 years old, you know, the people out there, and they say they have hyaluronic acid in the soil out there, so they don't really have to worry about all those enhancements, right? VA benefits got me covered. Look at that. Damn, Tim, you know, she's covered. So if you have VA benefits, you have the TSP, I mean, you could be good right there. You know, I think that I really like the retirement from like a military standpoint, because now your children have an opportunity to benefit from like the student loan considerations. And it's just really turns out to be like a really, really good power play, right? Yeah. It's in the market, right? Put it out there. Tam says that you put that money to work and don't look back. Don't look back. All right. So this is what now I think that what is this? 5%, 7%, 11%, 13%. That's what our boy Uncle Dave was saying. That you got to be able to draw down all that money. All right, they're saying in order to claim or own a private jet, you need to have at least 30 million. So Tim, have you ever thought about owning a plane, Tim?
Yeah, after we did that stream that time with Wealth Engineering.
Yeah, man. I used to work at the airport, and one of my favorite things that I observed working at the airport is seeing the people drive onto the airport property, swipe their badge, type in the code, and drive their car right next to the hangar, park their car, get out, get into their plane, and take off. Like just observing that right there, man, it's inspiring. You know, there was a guy, I might have mentioned this before. There was a guy who would leave here at 3:30 a.m. in order for him to fly down to Florida on a daily basis. And I'm over there thinking, I don't know if I really want to have a jet airplane, because from what I'm hearing, it has a significant amount of issues as far as like, you having to do the maintenance on it. I'm thinking that I just probably want a turboprop, something along those lines. And here in 2020, speaking about what Peter Investor M is saying right here, there's the guy Max Maxwell. I don't know if you guys know him. He's an investor here in North Carolina. Used to be. In 2020, he bought an airplane that was like $300,000, but he bought it solely based upon the idea that he could actually fully depreciate that airplane in 2020. So the entire transaction, $300,000, it was able to be absorbed into that 1 year, and that was a major move. And it's only because he was earning a higher income and he was in position that he was able to do that. Actually ended up flying all the way down to South Africa in order to assemble the plane and everything. So seeing him do that, and then I said to myself, okay, 300,000 could be my number. So you choosing between a Ferrari or an airplane, So I think that it's a really interesting choice. What about you, Perry? Have you ever considered having an airplane or a jet?
You know what? No, I have thought about it before in terms of like even like kind of like smaller planes. In terms, especially if you're doing something like you get to the point you're doing speaking engagements and things like that. But I really do feel like what you need to be making though is you really need to be pulling down something to make it worthwhile, for it to make sense anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you are like doing scouting for like investment property, it might be easier for you to hop in your plane rather than waiting for a commercial flight, And if you're not really traveling across the country.
Didn't meet Kevin get one?
Yeah, I think that he's struggling though with like I don't know. I think he paid like $13 million for it though. I mean, that's a lot of money, and he's using his YouTube income. He has the hedge fund, the house hack, and then he also has his YouTube courses. I don't know. Like, to me, $13 million, Tim, $13 million on a YouTube income.
I think he had more income than that though, Sim. Because I think he got properties. I think he probably did some syndication, some real estate syndications.
I would bet it's the hedge fund.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. His syndication is happening through his house hack.
I bet the hedge fund is the main thing that was probably, funding that.
I think that he's depreciating probably 60% of it, because one of the conversations that he was having, because Tim, I don't know if you've looked into this, but so from like 2020, I think 2020 was the first year you could do 100, and then 2021 was 90%, and then 2022 was 80%. So then 2023 would be like something along the lines of 70% depreciation. So he could be depreciating exactly that 70% of that $13 million. So I guess that's not worse than him just buying it out straight out, So the fact that you can be in business with the government for you to be able to make those sort of moves is really good. So this is not an investing channel, and we don't really advise people, but I think that it's interesting to really observe other people's money moves, right? So salute to D Linux Links. I'm here. I'm just trying to see D come over here and visit me on my little old channel. That's what I'm looking for, Tam. All right. All right. Peter Investor M talking about our prime numbers, and look at what On the Spot says she wants. Right? Could you imagine owning a train? I don't even know how you would justify that. Like, your commute time is going to be the same as being in a car. Who would be driving it? Where would it be parked at? I mean, I don't even know how it make sense of that. I've never heard of anyone saying they own the train outside of what's the name of that family? That's not the Rockefellers. Standard Oil. One of them. But yeah, so it's just it's interesting. But yeah, salute to On the Spot and her train idea, right? Yeah, Perry out there being a real parent for real out here in these streets.
Yeah, man. I thought because I got these headphones and I thought I heard something. I kept on thinking I heard it. I'm like, what? And I think I leaned over and hit the mute button. I had muted it and then I leaned over and hit it. Anyway, fatherly duty.
Yeah, but that's it right there. We should say, be more supportive next time. Hey, listen, what is it? A little bit of constructive criticism,
Yeah. Yeah. Once I got up there with him, I supported his emotional needs. Once I went upstairs with him for a minute, he's good.
But yeah, man. But yeah, so that's essentially what we wanted to talk about, guys. Is that it's important, and I like having conversations like this, because I really think that we should be considering how much we'll need in retirement, and we should be making preparations today for that same exact considerations. Like it doesn't make sense for you to just kind of just stumble upon your retirement. I remember one of my coworkers, he was assessing his retirement options, and he had like $700,000 in his retirement. He was like 65 years old, so he was considering Social Security, had $700,000 in the market. He couldn't tell me, because what was happening at the time, I was listening to Dave Ramsey, right? And I hadn't even got to the place where I was sophisticated and I was considering how much you're returning on your investments and everything like that. I think that it's very important for us to make those considerations today, and then make the ride just enjoyable as enjoyable as possible, and we just focus on going up. So Tim, I'll go ahead and let you go ahead and say any closing remarks in reference to our boy Dave.
Well, I would say today was a great stream. And I would say for anyone listening, I think one of the key takeaways that Dave didn't mention is when you getting close to your retirement age, 5 years out before that age come of that year, you should be starting your transition strategy. What most people tend to do wrong is they wait right up until that retirement year and they start making the changes. You actually should do that 5 years out, because it gives you enough time to plan. It gives you enough time to really assess where your accounts is at. And then it gives you enough time if you have to do what Sim talked about, if you have to do some type of conversions or things like that, you have enough time to do it before retirement. So I say just really sit down and put a strategy in place, because retirement is not, you don't really get a lot of do-overs, because either you're going to make it through retirement or you're going to have to go back to work. So I think it's important that you take the time to put some effort and energy into it. And that's all I have.
I know that.
No, go ahead.
So I know, Perry, that, like maybe the hardline numbers were not things that you specifically considered, but based upon our conversation today, what would you say that you want the people to really consider in reference to just future planning?
Yeah. So I think what's important is obviously whatever information is put out there, do your research. But what I would say I think is important also, I actually kind of glean from this networking. Because here's the deal. If you network and you meet people, you can meet people who actually have these amounts and are retired, and they're really going through this, dealing with what the drawdown is. And I think more times than not, we already know most people aren't ready to retire. But I think if you just network over time, you can meet people who, hey, yeah, this is the type, this is what I had, or just go researching it and looking for people who actually have that to get real ideas of how that works. Because that's the biggest thing, because that hasn't been my main focus, because I've been more focused in real estate. It's easy to hear things and just kind of take it at face value. But with something like retirement, especially, if your plan is certainly in the market, right? If you don't do that, once you're in trouble, you're in trouble. That's why it's so important to ask the questions and figure that out. And I think networking can at least help you get in touch with people who can, hey, give you real figures. I had 5 million when I retired. Here's what that's looked like over these years. And that's not all that uncommon if you just meet the right people. So great conversation though.
Yeah. So, and none of this is investing advice, but I think it's really important, if you have the runway room today, start considering how much it'll take for you to potentially live. Start assessing your monthly expenses, and your monthly expenses that are going to ultimately give you your annual expenses, and start really doing the math. How much do you need to have in order for you to have $100,000 drawdown on an annual basis? What is it going to take in order for you to have more or less? But it's really important for us to really consider today what we can do in order for us to be in position. And like Tam says, and like I also say, you have no strategy without a tax strategy. So it's definitely important for you to employ a tax strategist to really help you figure out, from a strategic standpoint, how to go about putting yourself in position. Salute to everyone in the chat. I appreciate y'all coming through. Peter Investor M, Tam, JT Coin Rings, Owner Spot, Tyrese.me. And then we also had Caramel Drip. And so we just appreciate y'all coming through. And these kind of conversations, I think I like to have, because I feel like we really should be making preparations now going into the future. Until next time, I appreciate y'all for coming through. Peace.